Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so welcome to the March 24th Town Council special meeting and public hearing. Let's call the meeting to order and take a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
To the flag
of the
of the
United States
of America, and to the
the
republic
republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So roll call on the right. Jonathan. Here. Tanya.
Here.
Carol.
Here.
Brian. Thought I heard him.
I muted him. and then-
Yep, here, somehow it muted me.
Sorry, it's my fault.
And I think Bob is in Shanghai, if I'm not mistaken. So Bob, are you on the line?
He is not. We have Corbin, Dennis, Katie.
Talked to him yesterday while he was eating Chinese food. So I don't think he's gonna be here. So it is us.
Oops.
And is there anyone online, by the way?
Yes, so we have Councilmember Cooper, Corbin Gordon, our attorney, Dennis Pay, Katie Shepley, and Read AI Meeting Notes, which is Corbin as well.
Okay, so actually, it doesn't sound like we have a lot of town folks on, but so the purpose of this meeting is really to look at a rate and fee schedule, which we've been talking about anyway. But we're just gonna rearrange a couple of things. Is Fred on, LRB advisor was online?
No, but I can email.
Did,
Yes.
was Fred informed too?
He was, yes.
Okay. So, I wanted to get him on
Remember?
first. We may have to, again, we may have to go back to the beginning of doing this. And so we can open up this to public comment to begin with, so we can make it open to the public. What I wanted to do was get Fred on so that he could present high level what his analysis and LRB's. Is he coming
I
on?
just texted him.
Okay, so because that sets up, if anybody from the town has a question, they're gonna need to know what the high level here is and what we're trying to accomplish and what they did. But if he doesn't come on, I'll give him 1 minute, and if he doesn't come on, we're just gonna have to move the meeting forward.
Is there anybody else on the call that could present in his absence if he can't get on?
Katie is on the call, I believe, and
She
she's
is.
been working on the project.
Hate
So
to
we
spring
could
this on people, but we're here.
Can Katie hear that?
Yes, I can, if you want to bring it up. Jan, did you send Fred the link, the URL link to the meeting?
I think we sent it, yes. So let me
Yes.
just go ahead and resend.
Because he did confirm he was going to be on the call.
He did.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I can definitely walk you through it. I don't see the material for the sewer. I had a few questions I think I sent to a few of you based upon my review of what LRB did on Friday. But we can certainly walk you through the presentation that they sent on Friday, and then we can talk through the changes. So yeah, I should be able to do that. So if you want to bring it up, you can go ahead.
All right.
And this is what, Katie, what Fred would probably be presenting here, or what?
Yeah, Fred would have been presenting the sewer rate, and it's really the identical one that was presented in March. I think that's the critical one to be able to approve today, because we have been paying JSSD the higher rate and we haven't passed that on to the residents. And then secondarily, we wanted to talk about the water tiering and the second set of recommendations sent by LRB.
Fred will join us momentarily.
Okay,
Perfect.
so maybe we should just wait for Fred.
Yeah, I was bringing it up.
So this is the rate study. What else did you want to see? The water usage?
Well, I think we're
that's
gonna
the rate study.
concentrate mostly tonight on the sewer,
Okay,
Did you email that?
I did.
and we'll probably come back to the water and other fees in April.
Well, I think we really want to look at the next set of recommendations that LRB has for water tiering. Based upon the input the town council gave on March 12th, they're coming back with a second set of tiering recommendations. So if you guys could
Mhm.
comment on those so we could approve them in April, that would be great.
Wonderful. I think this is him now.
So Mayor, question, do you want to focus on the storm first? So that we
Sewer.
get resolution
Sewer,
on that, and
yeah.
I'm sorry, sewer, you're correct.
Yeah.
Focus on that first and then fall back on the other
Okay.
issues.
Yeah,
Fred.
depending on time, because I don't think I want to have
He's
the
on.
meeting last more than
He's on.
45 minutes. You know, we're just gonna cut it at that point, if that makes sense for everyone.
Mayor Fred is on right now.
Hey, Fred, can you give us the LRB high level and certainly begin with anything around sewer and water from
Yes.
your analysis?
Yep. Yeah, so the sewer again remains unchanged. We're recommending the sewer rate be updated and increased from the $28.60 up to the $51.30. I've provided an updated memo report that shows an evaluation of the tiering analysis that reduced the kind of the impact from or allocation of cost to the tiers, the higher tiers, and essentially some of the lower tiers as well, and that's been provided. So that scenario is before you. On the water tiering side, it's still essentially what it's doing is it's putting more burden on higher users, which is again one of the objectives or directions we receive from you as a body. So it is putting more in the tier 6, what we're now classifying as tier 6, or anything above 36,000 gallons for residential. On the multifamily side, what's happening here is it's essentially shifting from right now your rate structure is such that you get most of your revenue from multifamily and irrigation from usage rates. Because there was an objective to create a base rate that was applied to all units for our multifamily, that's causing a shift in those rates where essentially low water users might experience a little bit more of an increase than high water users because of the base rate.
Excuse me a minute, can we focus on the sewer aspects first, given that?
Yes,
we have
sorry. Yep.
more time here?
Yeah, let me I'll share my screen with you folks. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Let's do are you able to see this document?
Not yet, but we will. We're close.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, we had provided this memo that looked at an allocation strategy for the enterprise funds. Just as a reminder, standby, we're still working through this now that we have the door counts for specific units within this bucket here. So we're going to have to break that out even further and evaluate the impact of that. So there's further modifications to standby. Water, we are discussing the tiering, and so that's still we're still working through that. And on the storm utility, we're completing the ERU evaluation. So on the sewer side, here's the evaluation again showing what you currently assess at $28.60. We're showing you need to increase that to $51.30 to account for the projected cost allocation and deficit and a contribution to fund balance. So that essentially is the recommended rate. It's primarily driven by the changes in your cost as well, the JSSD cost that's being transferred to you.
Yeah, so that $20 is really what we should have been charged for to some extent. That's what JSST tells me. That we were undercharged because they didn't properly account for anything on the north and east side, so to speak, of 248 over the past couple of years. And, I know, I don't know if anybody else did this. I looked at about 10, 15 towns and, the mid-50s is about average across the towns for sewer. So this kind of brings us up to probably what we should have been paying and we got away with for a few years by not paying. And so JSSD caught up with us, so to speak, and you know, we're gonna have to pay the $20, but additional. And that will bring us to a net neutral for what we have to pay per month. Right now, we're running at about $19,000 deficit, from what I can tell, because we still have to pay JSSD, the increased water, the increased sewer fees. So, at least I'm gonna ask council to approve at least at minimum here, just the sewer, and then we can revisit based upon the studies that LRB is doing on the water rate tiering and the storm drain. Although I don't like to be in a deficit of $9.85 a month times 900 units on the storm drain, so that's a good deal of money. However, that's soft money, in the way I calculate it, because, you know, that's money we kind of pay ourselves. In the sewer situation, that's hard money. We gotta write a check every month for that amount of storage usage. And we go into a deficit every month if we don't collect that. So I would ask, you know, that we address this first, and then we'll come back on April 9th and address some of the other issues. So, and Fred, do you think you'll have your analysis on the tiering and on the storm drain? It seems like the storm drain is fairly an easy calculation, but you know, to some extent, that's not my domain, that's yours. So will we have all those two pieces of information in enough time prior to the April 9th meeting, or are we looking at all this information is gonna come to us within a few days, which we hate doing?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the impervious area or ERU analysis yet, so we're not doing that side on the storm. So I don't know if
But-
Dennis or Katie, you have any updates on?
Dennis should be able to answer that. I know, Dennis, you're making headways in that. Can you respond?
Is Dennis on?
He is
Because
on.
we talked about this before, so.
Dennis, are you on mute?
I just nudged him. Hold on.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. I don't know what's
Sorry,
wrong.
I nudged you.
Yes, I do have an update. We sent our study that Hal did to the town for it to be forwarded to LRB. I did not know that wasn't forwarded on, but we completed our portion.
Let me check, make sure I didn't miss anything.
And I don't know if anyone else at the town forwarded that to you, Fred.
I'm still catching up on my email. I'll do that.
That and I can
forward it
send
on.
that tonight. That's not a problem. I didn't know that Fred hadn't received that. I mean, I'm not trying to point fingers. I thought that it was in his that he had that, but we'll make sure he gets it.
And that impervious study is the average amount of square footage of impervious that we want to calculate per ERU?
Right. We determined what the average, you know, residential unit was, and you know, equivalent residential unit, and how much impervious area was associated with that. And so then you can apply that to, you know, whatever your commercial, multifamily, and determine rates based on that.
And Fred, while we got you on that question, how do you calculate the total cost of the storm drain infrastructure, maintenance, and other, and you know, everything from depreciation to maintenance, and then you divide out by the impervious area?
Yes, yeah, so we have the cost allocation here that we're assuming is going to the storm drain system. So we can tally that and marry that with the ERU calculation to determine what the new fee per ERU will be. And then that will need to be applied based on that, the assumptions of ERUs per residential or commercial property. So we can, that'll be a quick turnaround for us once we have that data, just to, since we already have the cost allocation here in this memo.
Okay, terrific.
It'll be important that the city then turns around and assesses the fee according to that ERU calculation. So that may require some updates to your database, for example, to recalculate each customer's ERU count.
And initial, what I saw was $9.85 per ERU, it would increase. So that's
Yeah,
the.
that's based on the current structure,
Based on-
that we would need an increase on that.
And then I see, based upon, initial, numbers, that we would actually save $12.34 a month on water, netting out that, the average increase across all three would be $17.68 times 12 is $212 a year. Is that roughly what the town's looking at?
Yeah, if so that's as we speak now to water, that's some direction I'll need from you to determine what final scenario you'd like to evaluate. So right now, everything I've given you on the water tiering is revenue neutral from what you're currently generating. You generate about 1.2 to 1.3 million in revenues on the water system, and we've kept that as our target. However, if we'd like to offset those increases from storm and sewer in some cases, then we could pull those rates down in our scenarios to show about 1.1 million of revenue generation. So there would be some savings there, but what we've discussed in previous meetings is, whether you want to do that or not, whether you want to see the water rates come down or wait and make adjustments once you've completed master plans or evaluated these systems in future years. So
Well, we'll have to have that discussion offline, because I don't know what the pros and cons of each are. But, from a billing standpoint, it would be nice to show where we have a $20 increase and roughly a $10 increase, or about a $30 increase. It'd be nice to get a little bit of benefit off of the water per year, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
okay,
that's kind of my current thinking. But and there were two other things. So I think we got the water and sewer and storm drain piece. Jan also.
Standby.
There's standby and then the escrow fees. Can you comment on that? And do we want to talk about dropping fines and what we'll do in the next meeting to deal with that as well?
Okay, so we need to update the escrow fees. Right now, we charge a certain amount to developers, and that fee is not sufficient. So we have to come back to them in the middle of processes and say, you need to send us more money because we're out of escrow. And we have done that repeatedly over the last year, and it just, it's an operational nightmare. And it just slows everything down for the developer as well. And it turns out, I have to put my collection hat on and constantly be bugging them. And so it's best if we increase the escrow amount upfront, and we'll be proposing those rates in April's meeting. Standby fees, we are currently evaluating a different standby fee will apply to those who brought water as opposed to those who did not. So that will be on, Fred is working on that. That will be on April's agenda. We also are working with a guy, Gareth Lloyd. He's with Interstate Parking. We've been working on having him facilitate enforcement of parking and also other miscellaneous code enforcement. Gareth operates a very large operation. He started in Breckenridge, Colorado, and he's moved west, and Deer Valley uses them. Alta Ski Resort uses them. A lot of resort towns use him and have great things to say about his services. He does the back end. He works on a percentage basis, so he does the enforcement, the collection, and then remits to the municipality a certain percentage. And I talked to him recently about beginning with maybe a short trial phase to work on code enforcement. So we start with parking and then move to other like trash left, just various other things that we get complaints from residents on. He's willing to do that with other municipalities. He's started with parking and then just adapted the contract per the needs of the city. And I think we should start that way. He was the one who suggested the $200 fee because that seems to work with his ongoing operations. It's a fee that is not exorbitant and people typically pay it rather than push back. So the fear we had was that I thought it was a 400 fee, but it's 500. The fear is 500 is significant enough that we're going to get pushback significantly. And Gareth is the one who suggested 200 would be a most oftenly occurring charge for what we're trying to accomplish. But it sounds like you'd like to reevaluate that fee, the 200, Tanya?
Well, I'd like to hear from him. I mean, I think he's
Okay.
probably gonna have a commercial opinion on where the rate should be, so you're collecting the most that you can,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I have no
Neither
So,
do I.
no
None of
experience.
us are experts in compliance collection, so.
So-
That was my only
Yeah.
question, because obviously if he's on a commission, he's incentivized to collect. We're
correct,
incentivized to collect because it's revenue for the town.
right,
So if everybody disputes at 500 and then you end up
Collecting numbers.
yes,
collecting, yeah, so it was just
Yeah,
what's,
yeah.
okay,
So let's invite him in for the next, before we take a vote.
Yeah.
On the next, in April 9th, suggestion to Janice,
Uh-huh.
invite him in, present his analytics, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
of.
Sounds
Why another number might be more
Yeah.
beneficial to optimize your collection program, don't know, I mean, again.
yeah, we
that's-
can have him have that
Yeah.
discussion at the council level. And we will not plan on starting in April like we had discussed. We'll just have the discussion and then
Well,
we'll
we could
review it.
implement it, within 48 hours after that.
I'm all for
that's-
the enforcement.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big deal, but I think the question is, and April 9th is right around the corner. Our
Right.
next meeting is, so we might as well just wait. Let's talk to Gareth, try to understand. I'd like to understand his view of the fine structure, period.
Sure.
What, how do other towns optimize this in relationship to their collection capabilities? So let's look at that from his perspective.
Mhm.
That's his business. He must know, he must have gotten a fair amount of data
Right,
accumulated over time. So, and then we can make our decision.
That'd be very helpful.
sounds good. I think is
That
that
was it, yeah.
everything?
So escrow, standby fees.
Oh,
What was it?
we need to change the wording on some of our fees because now that the state has the review process happening at the planning commission level, we need to change the wording
Mhm.
and that was the blue line.
So that was the planning commission
Yeah.
stuff, so that's keeping us consistent with what the new codes are at the
Right.
state level for reviews by planning commission. Actually, it works out better for us to some
Yeah.
extent. We'll spend less money by doing that.
Correct,
although I don't know if we'll get the same result, so.
right,
I guess we'll all figure that one out. over
we
time.
will.
Um,
So those will come in April and we can review. We can review all of those changes at once.
but what the latest is we only included the sewer change for tonight. So the latest draft of, the latest revision of this only has the sewer rate. change.
Right.
So we're really just gonna vote on, so we start collecting that money, we're not running into arrears here, so to speak.
Did you want to open up for public comment?
Yeah, I'd say at this point, so we heard Fred. Let's see if there's anything further from you on this, Fred?
Yeah, can I just ask one question on the tiering? One of the concerns that was presented to us had to do with the irrigation customers. And it just was causing some shifts in, how we were applying the tiers. So, what was happening is our very high users were getting huge increases because of the way our tiering multipliers were applied universally across residential, multifamily, and irrigation. So in the document that we've sent out, we've provided an alternative scenario that says, hey, let's keep at least for irrigation users. We're going to try to keep the tiering similar, the water allotment similar, and keep more of a universal increase rather than having just substantial increases in those higher tiers. So I just wanted to get thoughts if you wanted to keep that in there for consideration, or if you're saying no, we don't want to do that, we're okay having our tier 6 users get really penalized. So right here, this is what it looks like if we adjust your current tier structure for only irrigation customers. You can see those that stay within tier 1 actually only get about a 50% increase in the bill. Your average users get a 76% increase, but the high users in tier 7 and 8, based on your current tiering, and the water allotment, so the water allotment stays the same as what you currently allow, they get a larger increase. So you're still, incentivizing conservation, but it's just not as drastic as the tiers for residential and multifamily. So it's pulling them away from that and giving them their own, putting them back to their own tiering structure based on your current fee structure. The other difference is we're not allowing the 10,000 gallons, of use. So that first 10,000 still gets billed at a reduced rate, but it's still it's just not as big of an increase for those smaller users. So keep that in there. Do you want to pull it out?
Well, the conservation, from what I understand, it really impacts at the irrigation landscaping level. So is that an incentive for those
I
that
mean,
have?
so it still would. So here again, this table here shows your existing tiers. This is what you currently allow for water use all the way up to you have a tier 7. We're calling it now 8 tiers because we're charging for the first 10,000 gallons, which is in line with the policy that you have for residential and multifamily. So here it keeps the water allotment tiers that you currently have, and still pushes a little bit more on these higher users. So from my perspective, it still achieves the objective in that those that fall in tier 7 and 8 are going to experience a larger increase than those that stay within tier 1 through 6. If you stay within tier 1 and only use 10,000 gallons, you'll actually only get about a 50% increase. Once you start getting into 2 through 6, then you see a 76% increase in your bill. Then tier 7 and 8, you get a larger increase. So this, from my perspective, seemed to marry what you've wanted as a council, but not causing kind of the unintended consequences from the tiering structure from residential and multifamily. So a little bit of a compromise between those scenarios.
Does anyone have any last comments on this?
Yeah,
piece?
for me, irrigation is a little different category than potable water. Flushing your toilet, bathing, cooking, drinking water, these are critical things that everybody's gotta have. And you can only cut back so much on those. Irrigation is a completely different matter. It's something outside of your home, it's not public health, welfare, safety, in my view. If they're irrigating combustible things, that's not good for the town. So I don't have a problem, applying this to irrigation, because it seems to me that's more of I don't wanna say vanity, but a personal choice kind of thing. And if you're an HOA, it's obviously an HOA choice. But I don't have a problem with this schedule, simply because here is where a lot of water goes. Here is where a lot of water is discretionary. Whereas inside of your home, you still have to shower, you still have to bathe, you still have to flush the toilets. And you still have to drink water. So I think it's a fundamentally different category from my perspective.
Anyone else? Me or Carol?
I mean, I'm just thinking about that this is gonna be a drought year. And are we gonna get restrictions from the state or from the county about using water? Because of that situation?
Very possible. Yeah, I mean, the state's pretty much drained of water, and you brought that same topic in last time, and from Salt Lake, we don't know really where that's gonna be. That's expected to be drained in 6 years based upon the current consumption. And the Jordanelle is down to a pretty low 50%. Now, lowest I've seen it this time of the year. So don't know. I think we need to go into, and part of conservation, I think, from the landscaping is there are new forms of landscaping which are more fire retardant and consume less water. So I would say that would be the incentive. If you're using water, you can change out your landscaping to be more water efficient and fire resistant. That's a good thing, so maybe that will be the incentive. By the way, we don't have a lot of homes here, from what I know. Based upon our water audit, we know that we're in the very small, we have the average, the average landscaping accounting for in Utah is 2,500 square feet, which is, if you take the square root of 2,500, it's 50 by 50. How many people in town have the 50 by 50 lawn that they're irrigating? Almost none. I don't know if anybody do they, so, we're at the consumption, the low end. And that's what scares me a little bit, because if our conservation occurs mostly from landscaping, we've done all the conservation probably that we can get to, except maybe for those outlier users that could begin to switch their grass shrubs to a lower form of, a better form of lower water consumption. And that probably would be mandated by the state anyway. So
In my subdivision, we have a number of plants that are all within 5 feet of the foundation, and they are irrigated. And so that's 102 homes that I'm aware of. And so if people started to adopt our wildfire measures, mitigation factors, those plants would theoretically come out, and the water lines that irrigate those would theoretically be plugged. So I think there is a little juice to be from the squeeze here. I don't know how to estimate that.
Yeah.
But at least that's in my subdivision. I know there are other subdivisions with watering systems. Carol, what is your subdivision do?
We are doing something incredible. We are pulling 7 feet from the front and the back of the houses. We have a company coming in. They're pulling all the bark, all the mulch. They're putting in stones. We have an option at the homeowner's expense to increase the stones. They're pulling all the shrubs that are up against the house. They're pulling them out. They're going to replace them with, I don't know what yet. They haven't decided. And today, going down Shoreline Drive, they're pulling all the scrub up. I don't know if anybody saw it today. Huge swath of scrub oak that's completely pulled out, leaving completely bare slopes.
So there are some.
So
savings
we
to
are
be had in irrigation.
really addressing the WUI requirements,
Well, that
more
seems-
so than we should.
That saves water, so we're not irrigating those plants.
That's right, yeah.
So I think.
But
there's-
it's also gonna look pretty ugly. I mean, there's not gonna be any greenery. I mean, driving past those slopes today, I just went, whoa. And then what happens if we get a lot of rain? And there's nothing to stop the rain from just flooding our sewers and our storm drains. That's a concern that I had when I looked at those bare slopes. It's like fires in California that, took out all the
Yeah,
all the stuff on the slopes, and then the water just comes gushing down.
that's the aftermath of a wildfire.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was commenting this on one of the calls today here. I don't know if anybody's been following the Midwest, Nebraska, so the wildfire is running rampant. And because everything is dry from the Midwest to the West. No one really knows. It was a major article, national news of how much the Midwest states and we sit in the corridor. So that's another issue. We're gonna have a town hall meeting on April 22nd again to update us. So, but water is gonna be important to
Yeah.
extinguish those kinds of situations. Anyway.
So,
keep this
so,
to-
so guys, I have a question. I have a question for Fred about this new proposed tier structure that has I think a more reasonable irrigation structure. Does that have any impact on our projected revenue for
No.
water?
Nope, it's
It's all revenue neutral as
yeah,
before?
so the recommendation or the scenario in the document I sent to you achieves the revenue requirement. So it's just
Okay.
a different way. And to highlight again, it's really doing what you're already doing. Just chart and the difference is we're going to charge for the first 10,000 gallons and then increase our rates such that we get that revenue requirement. So both scenarios achieve the revenues that we need to.
Okay. Yeah, then I think I like this one better.
Yeah.
And by the way, to Carol's comment, she's a neighbor of mine. We live in Shoreline 1, and we're kind of the guinea pigs for some of the wildfire remediation. I talked to the arborist because they started behind my house first. They didn't actually remove any trees. What they did was they removed all the deadfall and the lower branches, which what they call ladder fuel, right? When embers hit the ground and they ignite those, then they ignite the canopy. But what they did was they pretty much denuded everything by, up to about 4 feet high, right? That's why you can see right through them right now, especially when there's no foliage on them. So I'm not sure that's going to have a big impact on erosion because, the same root structure is there that will be sucking up water, right?
But Brian, the area that I saw, they yanked everything out. The slopes are.
Really?
Right.
And-
So this would be at the north end of the homes on Shoreline Drive. Right across from there. They
And
just-
Carol, this is Thomas. I would just add that we have gotten a few calls with regard to what is going on. And I would say, as a landscape architect, I think that of course we want to make sure we meet the 5 feet outside of any structure, but we are seeing a lot of denuding of the hillsides. And there, from a landscape architecture perspective, if it's just on a hillside and it's not within 5 feet or otherwise, our recommendation is that, we work really closely to decide how we want to address that. Because typically, if it's just Gamble oak and low growth, actually, it's generally better to leave that alone because it has established root systems and it may be more fire resistant than early succession landscaping that would otherwise come up, which will be grasses. So we do want to make sure we work with neighbors and the community to make sure they understand denuding the hillside may not be the answer. We actually could be fanning the flames with new succession grasses that come in that are much more easily flammable. So it's something, I think we want to balance that.
Well, thank you, guys. I'm gonna pull this because we are, we're closing in on the time I promised to to end this, and we'll have more of a chance in the next meeting to talk about the water and irrigation, but we still want to get to the sewer, and that's the primary motivation for this meeting. So I'd like to open this up to the public because we have to do that. So so I'm gonna open up this to the public. We don't have anyone here. Is there anyone online, Maria, that has raised their hand and would like to comment? Otherwise, we'll.
I don't show any hands raised. However, you can unmute yourself.
I was hoping our affordable community would show up. And just for the record, I have been sending them notices of our utility increases. I'm a little worried about the effect it will have on our affordable communities. They're pretty high users of water, and so they're gonna get hit with a pretty good increase, including the storm drain. They're gonna get hit with storm drain increases,
Right.
And
so,
sewer,
pardon me,
the sewer as well, sewer.
the sewer is hot,
Everything. Yeah.
everything.
So it doesn't sound like they made the meeting. We're still in public input, but I would suggest you and I go and talk, we reach out again, ask them in, make sure that they understand, the ramifications of what we're trying to accomplish here, what we have to accomplish. And, they understand the impact to them.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to do that.
How
I'm
many
gonna-
units are there?
75?
Something like that.
185.
17 buildings, that's full.
Okay.
So I'm gonna call, nobody else is here, so let's close public input. Let's call this discussion, because we're gonna have to do some follow-up in between. So, I'm gonna ask for a motion on at least what we have here in relationship to the sewer, so we can start collecting money we need to collect, that we're getting billed for from JSSD. Is there anyone want to make a motion for this?
So what we're doing is we're increasing from 2860 to 5130. And that's the recommended increase, as I understand it.
Well, I calculated it at $20.17, but maybe, I don't know, it's around 20. Fred, what was the final figure?
Almost 25.
It's right there.
I thought it was
Yeah,
5163.
5163 from 3146. So if you do the math, it's $20.17.
So it's 3146 to
5163.
well, my understanding, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, is you don't actually assess the $31.
Yeah, my understanding, unfortunately, if you go back to your billing, I think your billing shows 28. We have not been billing our residents the 31. So we did notice that a couple weeks ago that I guess there was an approval in the fee and rate schedule, but it never made it over to the utility clerk, and we weren't billing the full amount.
But the proposed rate is the $51.30.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Well, we got 5163. Let's make sure we got the right number.
It's
Because
5130. It's 5130.
Okay.
so, we probably need to agree upon, Fred, do you agree upon, is that 5130?
Yep,
Okay, so why don't we just make a motion that, we approve it at 5130?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we.
I'll second.
We increase our current sewer rates to $51.30 for each sewer connection. So that we begin to recapture the increases that JSSD has sent us, and that we are merely passing on essentially to the users.
And did I hear Brian, you seconded that? Is that correct?
Yes, I second.
Okay, so, with that, Carol,
Yes.
Tanya,
Yes.
Bob's not here, Brian
Yes.
and John.
Yes,
Okay, motion carries, so, we can start billing as soon as possible. I don't think we have anything further that really is, we talked a lot about water, but we're gonna have to drill into that on the next meeting. And, is there a motion to adjourn? Unless anyone else has anything.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you all for.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you, Brian.